George Smith Patton, Jr. was born on November 11, 1885, in San Gabriel, California, into a family steeped in military tradition. From a young age, George was captivated by tales of war and heroism, stories passed down from his ancestors who had fought in the American Revolution and the Civil War. This fascination with warfare was not just a boyhood fantasy, it was the foundation of what would become one of the most remarkable military careers in American history. Patton was a born soldier, and his early life was marked by a relentless drive to prove himself worthy of his family's legacy. But beneath the surface of this disciplined, battle-hungry young man, there was a complex and sensitive soul. Patton was dyslexic, a challenge that would have daunted many, but instead it fueled his determination to excel. In 1904, Patton entered the United States Military Academy at West Point, a place where legends were made. But for young George, it was not an easy path. While he excelled in sports and developed a reputation for his physical prowess, his academic struggles, particularly with reading, made his time at West Point a challenge. Despite these difficulties, Patton's determination never wavered. He graduated in 1909 and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army. Patton's early military career was characterized by his insatiable desire for knowledge about warfare. He studied the great military leaders of the past, from Alexander the Great to Napoleon, and absorbed their strategies and tactics. This self-imposed education, combined with his natural leadership qualities, set Patton on a course that would eventually make him one of the most respected and feared commanders of the 20th century. Before the outbreak of World War I, Patton's career took several important turns. He served under General John J. Pershing during the U.S. expedition to Mexico in 1916, where he gained his first taste of combat against the forces of Pancho Villa. Patton's performance in Mexico earned him the respect of his peers and superiors, and it was during this time that he began to develop his reputation as a fearless and aggressive leader. But it was the Great War that would offer Patton the opportunity to prove his mettle on a larger stage. As the world plunged into the chaos of World War I, Patton found himself on the cutting edge of a new form of warfare, tank warfare. As the First World War raged across Europe, the traditional tactics of warfare were rendered obsolete by the unprecedented scale of destruction. The stalemate of trench warfare cried out for innovation, and one such innovation was the introduction of the tank, a machine that would change the face of battle forever. George S. Patton, ever the student of military history and strategy, quickly recognized the potential of this new weapon, and it was in this crucible of modern warfare that Patton would first distinguish himself as a leader on the global stage. In 1917, as the United States prepared to enter the war, Patton was selected to join the newly formed U.S. Tank Corps. It was a role that seemed tailor-made for the aggressive and forward-thinking young officer. Patton threw himself into the work, studying tank tactics, developing training programs, and personally overseeing the construction of America's first tank training school in France. His dedication was so intense that he personally led his men through the rigors of training, believing that only by mastering every aspect of the tank would they be able to wield it effectively on the battlefield. The experiences of World War I had a profound impact on Patton. He had witnessed the horrors of modern warfare up close, but he had also seen the future of combat, a future in which mobility, speed, and decisive action would reign supreme. Patton's role in the war had solidified his belief in the tank as a crucial instrument of war, a belief that would guide him in the years to come as he prepared for the next great conflict on the horizon. With the armistice signed in November 1918, the world hoped for lasting peace, but Patton knew that this peace was fragile. He returned to the United States determined to continue his work with the Tank Corps, advocating for the development of armored warfare even as the military and the public turned their attention to the post-war world. Though the interwar years would see setbacks and frustrations, Patton remained steadfast in his vision, preparing for a future that he knew would once again call for men of action. The war had made Patton a hero, but it had also sown the seeds of ambition. As the world recovered from one conflict, Patton began to prepare for the next, driven by a relentless belief in his destiny as a leader of men and a master of the battlefield. The end of World War I brought peace to a weary world, but for George S. Patton, the war was far from over. The interwar years were a time of transition, not only for the world but also for Patton himself. As the United States grappled with the Great Depression and isolationist sentiment, Patton remained focused on the future of warfare, particularly the potential of armored combat. Though the military was largely demobilized, Patton never lost sight of the lessons he had learned on the battlefields of Europe. During the 1920s and 30s, Patton emerged as one of the most vocal advocates for the continued development of the tank corps, often clashing with military leadership who were hesitant to invest in this new form of warfare. He studied at the Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, where he honed his understanding of military strategy and doctrine. Patton's relentless pursuit of knowledge and his determination to modernize the U.S. Army's capabilities often put him at odds with the military establishment, but it also positioned him as a forward-thinking leader, ready to take on the challenges that lay ahead. Patton's work in these years was not without its frustrations. Budget cuts, a lack of political will, and the overall demilitarization of the U.S. after World War I meant that progress was slow. Yet, Patton persisted, believing firmly that the next war would be one of movement, speed, and decisive action. His foresight and dedication to the cause of armored warfare ensured that, when the time came, the United States would not be caught unprepared. As the 1930s drew to a close, the world watched in alarm as Adolf Hitler's Germany grew increasingly aggressive. Patton, ever the student of history and geopolitics, recognized the signs of an impending conflict. He doubled down on his efforts to prepare the U.S. military for what he saw as an inevitable war, advocating for more tanks, better training, and a stronger, more mobile army. While many in the United States hoped to avoid another global conflict, Patton believed that war was coming and that America needed to be ready. In 1940, as Europe erupted into World War II, Patton was promoted to the rank of colonel and placed in command of the 2nd Armored Brigade. His leadership skills, honed over years of study and experience, were now put to the test as he led his men through intensive training exercises designed to prepare them for the battlefield. Patton's rigorous training programs, which emphasized speed, aggression, and the effective use of armor, would soon pay off as the United States found itself drawn into the global conflict. December 7, 1941, marked a turning point not only for the United States, but also for George S. Patton. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor thrust America into World War II, and with it, Patton into the spotlight as one of the country's most capable military leaders. Now a brigadier general, Patton was tasked with leading the newly formed 1st Armored Corps, a force that would play a critical role in the upcoming battles across North Africa, Europe, and beyond. Patton's rise to prominence was no accident. It was the result of years of preparation, study, and an unyielding belief in the power of armored warfare. As the world plunged into the darkness of war, Patton stood ready, determined to lead his men to victory and prove the effectiveness of the tactics he had spent his life perfecting. As the Second World War engulfed the globe, George S. Patton found himself at the forefront of America's military efforts. The North African Campaign, a crucial theater in the war against the Axis powers, would be the first real test of Patton's leadership in a full-scale war. It was here, amidst the scorching sands and harsh conditions, that Patton would begin to forge his legend as one of the most dynamic and effective commanders of the conflict. In early 1943, following a series of devastating defeats at the hands of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel's Afrika Korps, Patton was appointed to lead the U.S. Second Corps. The American forces, inexperienced and demoralized, were in desperate need of strong leadership. Patton wasted no time in asserting his authority, instituting a strict regime of discipline and training that would soon transform his men into a formidable fighting force. Patton's methods were harsh, but effective. He imposed strict rules on everything from uniform standards to combat readiness, and his insistence on discipline and aggression soon paid off. Patton believed that only by instilling a sense of pride and professionalism in his troops could they hope to overcome the challenges they faced in North Africa. He drilled his men relentlessly, preparing them for the rigors of desert warfare and instilling in them the confidence they needed to take on the enemy. Patton's leadership was put to the test at the Battle of El Ghoutar in March 1943. In this pivotal engagement, Patton's Second Corps faced off against experienced German and Italian forces. Employing a combination of aggressive tactics and careful planning, Patton orchestrated a series of attacks that not only repelled the Axis advance but also inflicted significant casualties on the enemy. His ability to adapt to the changing conditions of the battlefield and his unwavering confidence in his men were key to the success of the operation. The victory at El Guetar marked a turning point in the North African campaign. Patton's forces, once seen as inexperienced and unreliable, had proven their mettle against some of the best troops the Axis had to offer. The battle solidified Patton's reputation as a bold and effective commander, earning him the respect of his men and the attention of the Allied High Command. Under Patton's leadership, the U.S. Second Corps continued to make significant strides in North Africa. His emphasis on speed, mobility, and aggressive tactics helped to drive the Axis forces out of Tunisia, contributing to the eventual Allied victory in the North African campaign. Patton's success in North Africa not only demonstrated the effectiveness of his leadership, but also set the stage for his future roles in the invasions of Sicily and mainland Europe. North Africa was more than just a battlefield. It was the crucible in which George S. Patton's reputation as a master tactician and fearless leader was forged. His victories here would pave the way for even greater achievements as he prepared to lead his men into the next phase of the war, one that would take them from the deserts of Africa to the shores of Europe. Following the success in North Africa, General George S. Patton and his men were tasked with an even greater challenge: the invasion of Sicily. This island, a stepping stone to mainland Italy, was of immense strategic importance to the Allies. The operation, codenamed Husky, would be one of the largest amphibious assaults in military history, and Patton was determined to play a leading role. On July 9, 1943, the invasion of Sicily began. Patton, commanding the U.S. 7th Army, was given the responsibility of capturing the western part of the island, while British forces, under General Bernard Montgomery, were assigned the eastern sectors. The two generals, both strong-willed and ambitious, would find themselves in a fierce race to see who could secure their objectives first. The campaign quickly turned into a contest of speed and audacity. Patton, eager to prove his army's superiority, pushed his men relentlessly, driving them forward with a combination of daring tactics and unyielding pressure. His forces captured key towns, such as Palermo, where they were greeted as liberators by the local population. But Patton's ultimate goal was the city of Messina, the gateway to mainland Italy. Patton's aggressive strategy paid off. Despite the difficult terrain and fierce resistance from German and Italian forces, his 7th Army made rapid progress. On August 17, 1943, Patton's forces entered Messina, beating Montgomery's troops by mere hours. The capture of Messina marked the successful conclusion of the Sicilian campaign and established Patton as one of the war's most formidable commanders. Patton's triumph in Sicily was marred by controversy. During the campaign, Patton visited a field hospital where he encountered soldiers suffering from combat fatigue, a condition not yet fully understood at the time. In a shocking incident, Patton slapped 2 soldiers, accusing them of cowardice. The incident caused a scandal, leading to reprimands from high command and tarnishing Patton's image. Despite the controversy, Patton's leadership during the Sicilian campaign was undeniable. His rapid advance across the island, his ability to inspire his men, and his strategic brilliance in the capture of Messina solidified his reputation as a military leader of the highest order. However, the incident in the field hospital served as a reminder of the complexities and contradictions that defined Patton's character, a man capable of both great heroism and deep flaws. The invasion of Sicily was a critical victory for the Allies, paving the way for the subsequent invasion of mainland Italy and bringing the war closer to Hitler's doorstep. For Patton, Sicily was both a triumph and a trial, showcasing his brilliance on the battlefield while exposing the more controversial aspects of his command style. As the Allies prepared for the next phase of the war, Patton would be called upon once again, his indomitable spirit driving him forward to new challenges and greater glories. By 1944, the Allies were preparing for the most ambitious military operation of World War II, the invasion of Normandy, codenamed Operation Overlord. While General George S. Patton was not initially involved in the D-Day landings, his role in the aftermath would prove crucial in breaking the stalemate and propelling the Allied forces across France. Patton's absence from the D-Day landings was not a matter of oversight, but a calculated decision by the Allied High Command. Recognizing Patton's formidable reputation, they used him as a decoy, leading the Germans to believe that the invasion would occur at Pas de Calais, the narrowest point between England and France. This deception, known as Operation Fortitude, was so effective that German forces were kept on high alert at Calais, even after the landings at Normandy. Once the Normandy beachheads were secured, Patton was given command of the U.S. Third Army. His task was to break out of the congested Normandy region and exploit any openings created by the Allies. With his characteristic aggressiveness, Patton launched Operation Cobra, a bold maneuver designed to pierce the German defenses and drive deep into enemy territory. Operation Cobra, initiated on July 25, 1944, was a masterclass in mobile warfare. Patton's Third Army swept through the German lines, encircling and destroying entire divisions. His relentless pursuit of the retreating enemy was marked by speed and audacity, with his forces often advancing 20 to 30 miles a day, liberating towns and villages along the way. This breakout from Normandy turned the tide of the war in Western Europe, shattering German defenses and opening the way for the liberation of Paris. Patton's success in Operation Cobra culminated in the liberation of Paris on August 25, 1944. Although he was not the first Allied commander to enter the city, his contributions to the victory were undeniable. With Paris freed, Patton continued his relentless drive, pushing his Third Army across the Seine River and advancing toward the German border. Despite his successes, Patton's advance was not without challenges. The rapid pace of his campaign stretched supply lines to the breaking point, leading to fuel shortages that temporarily stalled his forces. Additionally, Patton's impatience with the cautious strategies of some of his fellow commanders created tension within the Allied command structure. His desire to press the attack and drive into Germany clashed with the more measured approach favored by General Eisenhower. As Patton's forces approached the German border, they encountered the formidable Siegfried Line, a vast system of fortifications designed to repel any invasion. The fighting grew fiercer as the Allies moved into Germany, setting the stage for the next phase of the conflict, the Battle of the Bulge. In the bitter cold of winter, Patton's leadership would once again be tested as he prepared to face one of the most desperate counterattacks of the war. In the closing days of 1944, as Allied forces pressed toward the German border, Adolf Hitler launched a final desperate gamble to turn the tide of war. The German Führer ordered a massive counteroffensive through the Ardennes forest, aiming to split the Allied armies and capture the vital port of Antwerp. This audacious plan, known as the Battle of the Bulge, would become the largest and bloodiest battle fought by the United States during World War II. The attack struck with ferocious intensity, catching the Allies off guard. In the initial days of the battle, German forces broke through the thinly held American lines, creating a bulge in the front and threatening to encircle entire divisions. The situation grew increasingly desperate as Allied commanders scrambled to regroup and mount a defense. While many Allied commanders were stunned by the suddenness of the German assault, General George S. Patton saw it as an opportunity to once again demonstrate his boldness and military acumen. Anticipating the possibility of a German counteroffensive, Patton had already prepared contingency plans. When the call came from General Eisenhower, Patton was ready to act. In one of the most remarkable feats of military logistics and command, Patton ordered his Third Army to execute a 90-degree turn and march with all haste toward Bastogne. Within 48 hours, Patton's troops were on the move, braving treacherous winter conditions and constant enemy harassment. As Patton's forces raced toward Bastogne, the situation within the town grew increasingly dire. The 101st Airborne, under General Anthony McAuliffe, was encircled and outnumbered, but their resolve was unshakable. When the Germans demanded the Americans surrender, McAuliffe famously replied with a single word: Nuts. On December 26, 1944, Patton's Third Army broke through the German lines and relieved Bastogne, lifting the siege and turning the tide of the Battle of the Bulge. The relief of Bastogne was a testament to Patton's audacity, leadership, and the sheer determination of his men. It marked a pivotal moment in the battle, blunting the German offensive and setting the stage for the Allied advance into Germany. The Battle of the Bulge was a costly victory, with over 19,000 American soldiers killed and many more wounded or captured. However, the failure of the German offensive marked the beginning of the end for the Third Reich. Patton's leadership during this critical juncture earned him widespread acclaim and solidified his reputation as one of the most effective and dynamic generals of the war. While the Battle of the Bulge would prove to be Patton's finest hour, it also served as a stark reminder of the brutal realities of war. As the Allies prepared for the final push into Germany, Patton's thoughts turned to the future and the challenges that lay ahead. The war was far from over, but the end was now in sight. With the Battle of the Bulge behind them, the Allied forces pushed relentlessly into Germany. For General George S. Patton, the final months of the war would bring both triumph and turmoil. As the Third Army spearheaded the drive into the heart of Nazi Germany, Patton's aggressive tactics and unyielding spirit played a crucial role in hastening the end of the war in Europe. In March 1945, Patton's forces reached the Rhine River, the last natural barrier standing between the Allies and the German heartland. True to his bold nature, Patton ordered his troops to cross the river immediately, using any means necessary. In a symbolic moment, Patton famously urinated into the Rhine, declaring that he was marking his territory in enemy soil. As the Allies advanced deeper into Germany, the race to capture Berlin became a focal point. Though Patton was eager to lead the charge into the Nazi capital, strategic decisions by Allied commanders prioritized other fronts, and the honor of taking Berlin was ultimately given to the Soviet Red Army. Despite this, Patton's Third Army continued to make significant gains, capturing vast swathes of territory and taking thousands of German prisoners. As Patton's forces moved through Germany, they uncovered the full extent of the Nazi regime's atrocities. The liberation of concentration camps revealed the horrifying truth of the Holocaust, leaving a deep impact on Patton and his men. Despite his hardened exterior, Patton was deeply affected by what he saw, and he ordered that German civilians be brought to the camps to witness the horrors firsthand. With the war in Europe effectively over by May 1945, Patton's focus shifted to the post-war occupation of Germany. However, his outspoken views and controversial actions soon put him at odds with Allied leadership. Patton's insistence on treating former Nazis leniently, as well as his belief in the need for a strong Germany to counter the Soviet Union, led to heated disagreements with his superiors, including General Dwight D. Eisenhower. As the months passed, Patton's frustration grew. He was a man of action, a warrior whose talents were ill-suited to the complexities of occupation and reconstruction. In October 1945, Patton was relieved of his command of the Third Army and reassigned to a less prominent position. The general who had led his troops to victory across Europe now found himself sidelined, his career effectively over. On December 9, 1945, Patton was involved in a car accident near Mannheim, Germany, which left him paralyzed from the neck down. 12 days later, on December 21, 1945, George S. Patton passed away in his sleep. His sudden and untimely death shocked the world, ending the life of one of America's most celebrated and controversial generals.